He joined MCNC in 2013 and currently serves as the Vice President of Security Initiatives and the Chief Information Security Officer. Please welcome our first speaker, Chris Beal.
Cybersecurity. When I say that word, you're probably getting a picture popping up in your mind. And I'm willing to bet that that picture looks something like one of these. I see some heads nodding. I hear some laughs. I want to give you a different picture, a different way to think about cybersecurity. When you leave here tonight, and in the future, when you hear that word, I want a different picture popping up in your mind. But before we can do that, we need to go back in time. Way back. BC. Before COVID. All right, you ready? Let's go. What do you think about when you see this picture right here? How about this? Human health. So there are a set of basic practices that we follow in order to try to get healthy and stay healthy. These are basic things that anyone can do, and most people should do. Things like washing our hands, exercise, getting adequate sleep, brushing our teeth, cleaning the environment around us, going to the doctor for regular immunizations, checkups. We have all kinds of things that we measure and monitor and keep track of in order to know our status with regard to our health. None of these things up here are tailored to a specific health condition. They're all general, basic things. Now, doing these things does not guarantee that we will never get sick. Most people don't reasonably have that expectation. Well, we call these things hygiene. So practicing good hygiene does two very important things for us. First of all, it decreases the likelihood that we will get sick. It doesn't eliminate the risk, but it makes it less likely that we will get sick. And the other really important thing it does is it reduces the impact. Inevitably, when we do get sick, it's not as big a deal. It's not a catastrophe. So practicing good hygiene makes us strong. It makes us resilient. It makes us healthy. Cybersecurity is the same way. There are a set of basic practices that we can follow in cybersecurity to get cyber secure and stay cyber secure. Now, I don't have time in my 5 minutes here to go into really any level of depth about these things, but perhaps some of our other speakers will touch on some of these, and you can ask about them during the Q&A. But this basic set of things are things like installing security updates, looking across our environments for vulnerabilities, the same things that the attackers are looking for, and fixing them before the attackers can exploit them, limiting our use of administrator rights, training and educating our end users, using multi-factor authentication, backing up important data so that inevitably when we do have a compromise, we have that data to go back to, right? None of these things are tailored to a specific cyber threat. These are all basic things that anyone can do and everyone should do. So let's go back to our hygiene. And actually, I want to hit on one important point here. Just because one of these things is basic doesn't mean it's easy to do, right? It's easy for me to say, oh, well, you should just eat well, or you should just get good sleep, right? That can be a hard thing to do. And in the cyber world, these things can be challenging. It's easy to say, well, just install your security updates, but that can be a hard thing to do given your environment. So I want to make sure you understand that. Just because these things are basic doesn't mean that they're simple or easy, but they are really important and everyone should be doing them. So if we go back to our hygiene analogy here, I remember earlier on I said we were going to go back in time to BC. In 2019, a new threat to our health emerged, COVID-19. So we had to evolve our basic practices, right? We had to invent new things in order to keep us safe. Things like distancing or wearing a mask. We had to come up with new tests to help detect the presence of this threat. And then we got these amazing new vaccines that folks should get in order to keep themselves healthy, right? We had to change our basic practices. None of the other ones went away, but we had to get new ones. It's the same way in the cybersecurity world. New threats emerge, and we have to evolve in order to keep up with those threats. So being cyber secure is not about next-gen, AI, high-tech, whatever. Those things are important tools, and they can help us, but that's not what cybersecurity is really about. Cybersecurity and being cyber secure is about doing the basic things well over and over again, and doing those basic things will decrease our likelihood of a security incident and decrease the impact of the inevitable incident when it does occur. So I want you, when you hear cybersecurity, I want you to think human health and how you can practice cybersecurity safely. Thank you.
Don't go run away. It's time for audience Q&A. That's right, you're captive up here for another 5 minutes according to my contract. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone who gives us a question during audience Q&A will receive a gift card to 13 West here at the Box Yard, so you get to go home with some cash in your pocket. Already we got somebody who wants some cash in their pocket. That's awesome. Our first question will be coming to you right from back here near the back row.
Hi. I was wondering if you were aware of any threats on the horizon. I know you have these basic, I wouldn't say basic, these recommendations for security. Are you seeing anything that we as digital universe here should be paying attention to, or should keep an eye on as it comes to WordPress, plugins, all those different stuff that we're using? Thanks.
Yeah, so the emerging threats that are coming, what are things people need to be paying attention to in their day-to-day lives?
So the threat landscape absolutely changes all the time. There are constantly new vulnerabilities that appear. Some of them are mundane, some of them are pretty esoteric. But what I would want everyone here to understand is that the best thing that most folks can do to protect themselves is follow these basic things. Make sure you're installing your security updates. So if the new WordPress vulnerability is announced, right, you're on top of installing the patch for that, right? Implement multi-factor authentication so that when the next type of phishing attack is deployed, you're protected against that because you've already turned on MFA. So those basic things, for folks in the audience who are not cybersecurity pros, who are having to really pay attention to those details, this is the stuff, the basic things that I would encourage everyone to work on.
All right, we got another question from here in the back. Apologize for only having one mic. Someone hacked into our microphones, I think.
My name is Sid Chopra. I'm actually a volunteer with the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education, which is under the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They actually had a conference yesterday with the CISA, which is a cyber infrastructure security agency, about cyber hygiene. And this is a very, very important problem. One of the things I keep seeing not addressed is, what do we do with all these devices when we're done with them? You can't throw these things away. They've got all kinds of information. Have you seen anybody talking about disposal of devices?
That's right. The question is, for our devices that are being taken away, recycled, given away, what's the best way to keep them secure?
So that is an excellent question, and I will readily admit that I am not an expert in this area. So perhaps some of the other folks who are speaking here tonight might have more expertise than I. But generally speaking, for mobile devices, both iOS and Android, there are established mechanisms that are procedures that you should follow to make sure here's what you do to securely get all your data off of that device before you are going to sell it or dispose of it. So those are generally well documented, so I would encourage following those procedures. And then I've also always been taught throughout my 20-plus year career, if you have something that you are really worried about data recovery on, you need to physically destroy it, right? So that's sometimes problematic from an environmental standpoint, so you have to weigh which risk you're more concerned about, but certainly from the standpoint of hard drives and laptops, if you are truly concerned about data recovery on that, physical destruction of that device is really the best option for you. But again, I'm not an expert in that area.
Well, it's good to know that my kids are cybersecurity experts because they ruin every technology thing they touch. Awesome, we got another question over here from the party couch.
Hey, do you have any tips for motivating less tech-savvy people for like instilling hygiene skills?
Some ways you can take the somewhat reticent folks in your lives and convince them to practice good hygiene, or if you can convince me how to get my wife to do the software updates.
So I will be honest, the most effective metaphor I have found, and this is why I talked about this tonight, is this analogy of health. Right? Most people can relate to that, and they understand there are things I need to do to try to stay healthy, and being able to create that metaphor for them, that it's the same way in the digital world, and here are those basic things. That's the start. So just like it's difficult, it's one thing to tell someone you need to eat better, you need to exercise. Getting them to actually do that can be challenging. So it can be the same way in the digital world, but I think just the start of here are things you need to be concerned about, I think is a good way to begin the conversation.
All right, any other questions about cybersecurity and good digital hygiene to protect you and your loved ones? All right, we'll get our last question back here in the back.
Hi, thank you. I don't have a question per se, but I just wanted to answer that other gentleman's point about disposal of electronic media. So there is a concept which I gather is called reverse supply chain. So what you do is you find people who are engaged in reverse supply chain, and you can then give your electronic items to them, and they will make sure that it is disposed of and sanitized in the most appropriate way. And this also helps in terms of making sure that your phones and other items don't land up in landfills and other places, so that you are also being environmentally friendly by making sure that you give your items to a reverse supply chain management organization. I think there are a couple of them in the RTP. Maybe a Google or a Bing would perhaps show up some information. Thank you.
Great. Reverse supply chain logistics. I guess there's really not a whole lot to answer that. But if there was one thing you could leave as someone to take away that they could do directly when they get home to improve their security hygiene, what would that be?
One thing that everyone can do is install security updates. Right? So every device you have, whether it's your laptop, your iPad, your phone, those things are constantly telling you, hey, there's an update that needs to be installed. And a lot of people ignore those and say, oh, I'll do that later. That's the one thing that's easy to do. You can go right now and install those security updates, and that's what I would encourage you to do.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, big hand for Chris Beal.